Welcome into 11 Personnel, presented by Monticello Bank, a Freaky Friday edition, as Ryan Limited would like to call it. Little happy hour. Get your weekend kicked off the right way. It's been a trying week for some. We'll get to that in a moment, but I need to start with some breaking news because Maxwell Hairston just ran the fastest 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine, 4.3 flat. He was hauling some you-know-what, Luckett. I know that going into this event, we were talking, hey, if he puts up some good numbers, like we think he can get in first round range. Will he become the first ever Kentucky defensive back selected in the first round of the NFL draft?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a chance here because Nick, I think a lot of this is you've got to take the times out. Like cornerback's a premium position. This is not the strongest cornerback draft. Then you got two big cornerbacks are hurt. Siobhan Ravel and Benjamin Morrison at Notre Dame. Both have serious injuries. So there's kind of a void there. And I think Hairston has put up some good numbers his junior year, or his 2023 year was really, really good. So I definitely think there's a chance where opportunity meets kind of circumstance for him. And I think the testing was going to be big here because that could just give you more evidence to believe in him. And we thought he could run a really good time, and you see that play out. So he's got the size you would want, and he got the speed, the short speed, and the long speed. I think there's a definite opportunity for him to sneak in there. But bottom line, I think, I'd be surprised if he fell out of the top 40, top 45 at this point. Like if he doesn't go first round, he's going to be one of the first few names called in that second round. And so, again, Kentucky's going to have the defensive back drafted pretty high in the draft.
Yeah, and there will be a matter of personal preference for some. I know Mel Kiper is really high on him. Some other folks are not because of the games he's missed. But some might see that as a positive. He's shown ball skills and a limited opportunity. So great start for Hairston up at the Combine. You haven't had really much to work off from Deion Walker's NFL Combine. He only jumped yesterday and did the bag drills. So we don't really have a lot to work from there. Not really sure what his future holds in the draft because it's the opposite in Hairston's case. Like Deion's pretty loaded that Deion's competing against.
Yeah, I think it's the opposite is true. I think when you talk about Deion Walker, this is one of the more loaded, I think, defensive line drafts. Maybe not like top guys, but guys between 20 and 80, like in those draft slots, there's a ton of them that could go. And so how many guys do you have to pick before Deion Walker gets in the range? I think is a fair question to wonder there. And for him, you've seen a lot of, I think, slippage to his draft stock. I think the low-hanging fruit is to be, Kentucky didn't develop him, but I also think he's a little bit of victim of circumstance too with how deep this draft class is, and also he didn't have a good year last year. And I think the medical's really important for him too. Like how bad was that back injury he had this year? Like that's something we don't know if that's something maybe limited in his kind of market value in the draft right now. But with all that said, a guy that size that with the pass rush production that he has, I find it hard to believe he's going to fall out of the second round. Probably early third round at best, assuming there are no crazy medical or character issues, which I don't think there are. But I think you're seeing kind of the opposite of how Hairston is kind of thriving. You've seen kind of the opposite from Walker, just based on the circumstance of this year's collection of players.
It's kind of crazy because it felt like we were just at the Super Bowl and now the Combine's already here. But this is just one.
Well, for me, it's crazier because the national championship was so late.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I don't even consider the Super Bowl, but the national championship and then the Combine, it's like a month.
Mm-hmm. And now we've got a couple weeks until the UK football pro day, and that's where we will see Deion test and run his 40 and all of that. I'm fascinated to see that, know what like his 10-second split, his get off is down there.
I'm waiting for you to time it on your iPhone and then tweet out the time.
Oh,
Deion
can't
Walker
wait.
ran a 4.1240.
Fastest 40 ever by a 300 pounder. But we'll have that. And then the draft will be at the end of April in Green Bay. But before I get anywhere else, I do need to remind you that we're brought to you by Monticello Bank. And, the calendar's turning to March and get in on the madness and check out Monticello Bank's HELOC special. Use the equity you've built in your home to finance projects around your house. Get that upgrade, build that deck, try that addition, upgrade your kitchen, and you can do it with a great rate from our friends at Monticello Bank. They're always going to put the numbers on your side to get you the best deal possible. With 20 locations in 14 counties across Kentucky, they've got more than 120 years of experience in the Commonwealth. So bank local. They'll take care of you no matter what. Check out their HELOC special today. Monticello Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender. Visit them online at nbcbank.com. Monticello Bank, proud presenting sponsor of 11 Personnel. Lucky we did not make our trek up to the Combine, partially because there was a lot of Kentucky football stuff happening close to home that I know we're excited about. And it actually, there's a lot of different reasons why. It worked out well though, because you've been under the weather. How are we holding up, buddy?
Oh man, yesterday that was a rough day for Mr. Luckett here. Wednesday was not a good day, but yesterday was bottom of the barrel. Doing okay today. Can actually function as a human being today.
So you had the Otega Owe hangover. Were you able to?
Well, I
for that.
I was, but I didn't know if I was going to make it. And then I think I got some adrenaline from that. So I got to actually enjoy that somewhat, but I wasn't my normal self during it. But yeah, yesterday was rough. It was a rough day, but we're feeling a little better today. Hopefully the worst of it is behind us. I never really dealt with the flu growing up. It was never really a thing I had.
Yeah, and I'm with you in that I've been sick, but I don't know if I've been flu sick. COVID
I've
hit
had
me pretty hard once. Yeah,
I've had colds throughout my life. Like that, I would, because there's colds and flu kind of overlap.
Right. Severity.
I was a strep throat merchant growing up. Definitely.
Ooh, you still got the tonsils? Or are those gone?
I still have those.
Okay.
I don't think it ever got to that point. But
I got those out as an adult, and it was not fun. So if your kid might need them out, just do it. Do them a favor, even if it sucks for a while. It sucks way worse at 20.
I had colds, had stomach viruses. I've had minor bouts with pneumonia, but never consistent, I get the flu every year type thing. That's starting to happen in my older years now. It's not very fun, let me tell you. And this one is probably the worst batch I've had. And so, yeah, I've just, because you typically, when I get sick, I can still, do our job and work.
Yeah.
Get stuff done. Yesterday, I texted Tyler, and I was like, I can't do nothing right now. I have to just go crawl in a hole. So, yeah, it's pretty brutal. And I've had everything every symptom you would associate with the flu, I've checked every box. So I've had fever, I've had chills, I've had nausea.
Can't knock his resume. He's got it all.
Yeah.
Checks every box.
Headaches. Yeah, you could just I've hit every checklist. And Combine week, typically one of us is extremely sick.
Usually, I used to think that it was because we were, it was the byproduct of being there. You're around a bunch of people in a convention center. There's probably some germs going around up there. You combine that with working, 8-9 hours and then drinking some beers. Okay, maybe it's just this time of year. This is just what happens. It's the Februarys.
Yeah, I definitely think, it's more, the odds are higher. I also think going on a plane last week, sending 2 kids to daycare.
Yep.
That probably is not helping my chances of not catching something.
Did the kids get sick? That's the big question.
Yeah, I mean, one kid, Henry had an ear infection as soon as we got back.
Oh, well, so okay. Well, that's manageable though. It's not. They didn't get the same sickness that you did though. Where they're just...
ear infection and bronchiolitis, where he was fairly sick for a day. Taylor believes she had what I had, and she was sick before we left. So this kind of maybe just
Okay, so you've all, yeah, that's rough. That's a rough go of it. But fortunately, though, for timing's sake, for our podcast sake, you were not too sick to make the trip to Lexington on Tuesday, where we spent 90 minutes chatting with Mark Stoops and new members of the Kentucky football team. And Luckett, I'm glad you were there just because, like, let's be honest, tomorrow's March. Most people's attention is focused on that. And they don't really, they're kind of mad at Mark Stoops. They're liking Mark Pope. They're mad at Mark Stoops. But I feel like we got a lot to talk about from that press conference and from what we learned. So I've been looking forward to this all week. I'm glad you're feeling up for it. So I guess the question is, where do you want to start? Because there was so much to unpack. We're kind of sprinkling things out throughout, the next couple of weeks, because bombarding you with football stuff is going to go into ears of some and out another for many folks. So maybe, how about this? How about I start by giving you a compliment?
I would love that.
Okay. Because while we took a week off while you were down in Florida running your 10K, which I'm glad you survived, you did it. You made it. You made it across the finish line without puking or pooping or anything like that. But you wrapped up, I think, our last show talking about how spring practice, if you're going to be this team that wants to get back to being physical and a line of scrimmage team, you can't kind of half-ass it during spring practice. You got to go hard. And
you
when
can't have country club week.
Exactly. And when you ask
Yeah.
Mark Stoops, essentially, all right, you going to do this? He confirmed it, and I thought he gave a thoughtful, pretty good answer to your question to confirm that yes, they are going to go hard in the paint this spring.
Yeah, I think overall, the messaging, I think Stoops hit the messaging. Like, hammer, meet, nail.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether you want to hear it or not is your own prerogative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, but I think for where they are and what they need to done, I think you heard kind of what he wants to do. But you also heard, like, they want to get back to running the football and being entertaining. I think their version of entertaining might be different than another person's version of entertaining. But yeah, I think you've heard what they wanted to get back to. And I think it was an acknowledgement that last year was bad. And they let what they let happen behind closed doors was unacceptable. And I think Stoops he's letting everyone know that he's taking ownership for that, but without being specific on what actually was going on behind closed doors, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. It was the buck stops with me. I don't want to spend all of my time lingering on it, but I'm aware of what went wrong. I'm taking responsibility, and I've got a plan to fix it. And the other part to that is, in his admission of his faults, he didn't say we needed it, but it kind of, he almost went that far to say that he almost needed a reset, because he let the big picture, the overwhelming nature of all of the big picture changes, get in the way of him doing the job on a day-to-day basis the right way. And so, we'll get questions from some people about GM and all this sort of stuff. They aren't giving any details on that, but essentially he said, we've got a strategic big picture plan, and I know what I need to do every day to, like, add the building blocks to achieve those ultimate big picture goals. So, like, while it was a little bare on some of these specifics on what went wrong and here's exactly how we're going to fix it, but I think the methodology is pretty clear. We're going to get really old, and we're going to get tougher, and we're going to play with an edge. And you could feel the edge, right? Because like last year, it was every press conference he was whining about something, and he didn't want to make a headline. So I was overall pleased with just the tone of the messaging too. It wasn't just what he said, but there was very much a, like, he's on the edge of his seat, and there's and we're going, and we're going full speed ahead, right?
I wonder too if it's public acknowledgement that, you mentioned the bigger picture, the bigger issues, which was part of it, but there was also one foot was out the door.
Yeah.
He wanted the opportunity to have a job where he could go compete at a higher level in this sport. Just call it what it is. I think he thought he was going to get that. I think part of the reason he hired Rich Gangarello for last year Will Levis is he thought that would be like the fast track to get there. But I think part of the reason he brought Liam Cohen back was he thought he could, reignite them and then maybe get them there, and it almost did. Almost got him the A&M job. So I think maybe this isn't, and by him saying this, maybe it's a public acknowledgement, but by him, like, I'm here.
Yeah. All
Now,
the way here. Yeah.
And from the other side, Kentucky can't really, they can't get it out. They owe him all this money. So it's like, so we got to figure out how do we survive, or not necessarily survive, how do we succeed when this partnership and move forward? I think for him, it's like, I'm going to be here, so I'm going to figure out what we have to do to win games and make this an enjoyable experience for everyone, and figure out what we can do to have some pride in this program again. And that's where they're at right now. I think the acknowledgement that they have made, like, to me, multiple off-season changes within the strength and conditioning program, what we're going to see at spring practice, some of this stuff. He mentioned Dean Hood a couple times.
Yeah.
Dean Hood has Freddie's old job, essentially, and they're kind of director of player development, and basically he is like the life coach kind of thing.
The culture coach, yeah.
Yeah. And so what they're doing is just kind of to build up cohesion and just trying to build a team on the fly, essentially. And so now we'll see how all of this kind of stuff plays out. But the real big bet this year, though, and you leave that press conference, is just they're banking on a lot of it. Just like continuity is going to fix a lot of problems, like continuity and having older players. And then I mean, we'll see if that does. What if that's not the answer? What if, like, you get the same win and loss results? Like, where you at then? That's a question to be asked later. But he's betting on some things that I think he believes strongly in. And we'll see. We'll see if he comes. If that at the end of the day, when he leaves this imaginary casino of football program running, if you leave the casino feeling feeling like, oh, you broke even, or if you lost some money, or if you won some money.
And to that point, what he knows best, what he did to raise the floor, was having a foundation where you're winning games in the trenches. You're winning fights in the trenches. You're able to run the football, and that bottomed out last year, right? So now it's like, well, because Kentucky, essentially, he created a high floor program in Lexington where they would punch above their weight every once in a while. And
it could dictate the terms of the games, which made you a good one-possession game team.
Mm-hmm. And
they didn't do that last year, because not only couldn't the run game on offense, we all know about that, but they couldn't stop a nosebleed.
Yeah.
About halfway through SEC play last year. And if they would have, it kept getting worse. So if they would have had to play 3 or 4 more games, who knows what that would have looked like at that time.
Could have gotten real bad. Drew heard Casino. He's down. Maybe we can go get Bert. I know. Did you see the new Brett Bielema rule too? The T signal is now no longer a penalty. It's a dumb little rule change, but they made a rule out of the Shane Beamer Brett Bielema bowl game feud. So yeah, nevertheless, back to the actual football talk from the other day. One thing that just stuck out to me in years past, some of this stuff would get a little monotonous, a little routine. The new portal guys would come in and they didn't want to step on any toes and all this sort of stuff. David Gusta was the guy who's like, it's my last year. I don't care whose toes I'm stepping on. And that's essentially what Stoops said. It's like, it's your team. Go out there and do it. Be about it. Like, we can't afford we can't be afraid to step on anyone's toes when we're hitting the reset button. And also, whose toes are there to even step on the offensive side of the ball? Like,
That's true.
you can't make anybody mad because everybody's new. I'm sure there's going to be some stuff that maybe we didn't hit immediately, but I wanted to get to, you talked about getting old. Well, like it is difficult for you and I to quantitatively describe how old this team is until you meet these guys and you hear them talk. And you're, yeah, these are old guys. Like they have they're old. I don't, especially when we interview, like, you'll hit some freshmen out there too. And freshmen are always like, yeah, I want to get to the NFL and do all these yards and we're going to go to the playoff. And like the old guys, there's no talk about like anything like that. It is such a different, mature conversation and you can just feel it. And I don't know of all the players you talked to, which one felt the oldest. I don't know if it was like Josh Braun certainly does because he's hitched, he's married, he's got a wife. But Zach Calzada, to me, like he is the perfect player for this rebuild. Period. He asked him what he learned at Incarnate Word. It was all about developing and growing as a man. Yeah, he got a little faster. He got a little bigger. He's more confident running the football. But for him, it's all between the ears. And if there's one thing I've learned doing this job, most of these quarterbacks, the arm talent, the athleticism, it ain't too much different from one another. You get to splitting hairs in some aspects. Some do some things a little bit better than others. The ones that make it are the guys who got it up here. And when I asked him, if nobody's seen you since that Alabama game, these Kentucky fans want to know what to expect. What should they be looking for on Saturdays at Kroger Field? He said resilience. If there's one defining characteristic of my game, it's resiliency. And if that isn't exactly what this team needs, it's a guy who's pissed off, who doesn't like Auburn, who went on the record and said, I got a bad taste in my mouth from there. Things didn't go the way I wanted to, and they're on the schedule. He's going back to Jordan-Hare Stadium. He's going to have to face the music, and he's prepared to. He admitted there were times where he didn't know if he was going to make it back to the SEC, and he wants to make every moment count. And the part, just the cherry on top of it all, is he said, redemption is big for me, but I know it's not more important than the team. Yeah. Like it takes a backseat to what the team needs. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to win. That's the kind of guy Kentucky needs at quarterback to rebuild this broken program.
Yeah, I mean, I think just everything about Calzada's kind of, I'm not even just take anything like what he does on the field as from a player standpoint, but just his career and his like story arc and what he's gone through to get to this point. Like, I don't think that's a bad guy to bet on for a 1 year, situation that Kentucky's in right now. I don't think that's a bad thing to bet on. And then if it goes bad, you can start Cutter Boley. Right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I don't think it's a bad thing to bet on. Now, how good can he be? Is there enough? Does he have enough help around him? What does this receiver situation look like?
Mm-hmm.
It's a big year, I think, for Bush Hamden. All of that, but there's obviously there's some stuff he does, or you could see him working here. And if you just carbon copied his stats from A&M into Kentucky, you would be, I think most fans would be they would take that. They would sign up for that season right now. 17 touchdowns or 19 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, right under 60% completion rate. Get close to 3,000 yards if you stretch that over a full season. I think a lot of people would take that right now. But I do think definitely he fits just kind of what they want to be as a program. And I've kind of talked about this, and you brought up Bielema earlier. There's a difference, every team plays hard. But some teams play harder, or not every team, I would say, plays hard. They're 100% all 13 games. But some teams do it more often than others. And Kentucky's always been known to have a clunker under Stoops, but most of the times you felt like you knew what you're going to get from an effort level.
Yeah.
Just base, and this has nothing to do with knowing anything about football or anything. It just basically, when you watch them, do you feel like this team is
playing hard
and aggressive?
And discipline. That's another part of it too. And I think the maturity helps with that. Yeah.
They just have to get back to that. Yes. That has to be something they really hang their hat on. Is that, and that playing with a certain level of tenacity and toughness and relentlessness. That it's something that I thought they had for a lot of for 16, 17, 18, 19. 2020 was weird, but 21. I thought, and even 22, I thought they had that for most of the year. That's something they just got to get back, and that they've lost, I think, here over these last 2 years. It's just something they have to get back, and to me that's non-negotiable. So how do you fix that? Because that's something they have to get back, and I think what they're doing is, you heard Stoops also mention reps on tape. There's a lot of players who've played a lot of football, so they know
what they're getting.
They know exactly what they're going to get, or they feel like they know exactly what they're going to get, and making those pieces fit. And again, I think you kind of go and look portal checklist. They needed this, and this. I think they've checked a lot of those boxes, but some of those checks are going to have to be erased because some players are going to bust, some players are going to miss, and so we'll see what happens there. They just can't have a ton of them missing them. They've got to be able to hang their hat on that effort level, and then can you be good enough on the lines of scrimmage to really cover up a lot of ground? Because I think that feels like an area where they've lost a ton of ground the last couple of years, and I think that's a big TBD. I think on paper a lot of the pieces make sense, but you have to see it go out and
you got to play
out that way.
Yeah, and it's also one thing to see the guys on paper and then to see them in person. Alex Wolfschlager was beefier than I thought, but he was also smaller than I thought because he was next to Shiaz Pete. And my God, Luckett, that guy is a giant. He is one of the – I remember when they had Gruenschlager back in the day, and that guy really – he was just a giant, right? He couldn't really play football. But, Shiaz Pete is – an enormous human and a fascinating individual. I need 30 minutes just talking to that guy because he fascinates me. But there was a sense of looking around, talking to some of the guys. You see the size there. You see Darren Stry, that guy. I hate that I don't have all this evidence out there right now for all of our listeners and viewers to go watch right away. But Darren Stry's he's got that Michigan tough, and he's just going to go in there and he's going to whoop some ass. And, it is because I asked him, Wolf coaches him hard. Is that the kind of style you like? It's coached by my dad. I got coaching 24/7. I'm ready for it, and he was just mad that the weight isn't sticking to him as much as he wants. So, that's where he's at. He's angry if he's not gaining 30 or 40 pounds. He gets angry just talking about playing physical football. And when he shook my hand, Luckett, I felt like the cartoons where they're all their hands all skinny and shriveled up afterwards. I was the guy from Scary Movie that had the strong hand afterwards. That's what he did to me. That guy, there's that offensive line room. they went and got some big dudes, and they went and got some guys who have played a lot of football. They got to learn how to play together, but I think they're mature enough, and they know the kind of coaching they're going to get, that they're willing to accept everything and buy in. And that's really what this spring is going to be about, is how well do they buy into the scheme, the system, and buy into each other and learn how to be comfortable playing with one another, passing off assignments, passing off blockers, et cetera, et cetera. Like that's what the name of the game is this spring. And to go back to what Stoops said about practicing harder, part of the reason why he believes that they can do that is just because they have the numbers to, right? Like if Jalen Farmer, somebody steps on his toe and he's got to miss a couple practices, they've got other guards they can put in. It's not just like we've got Malachi Wood. Let's hope he doesn't get hurt because he's our only offensive tackle we have. There's some bodies there that they can work with in spring practice.
Yeah, I always think number one, underrated moment Tuesday was Shias Pete calling Mark Stoops a statesman.
Because he's genuine, which I would not like. A statesman by nature is a politician. Politicians are not genuine, but maybe in the old, maybe the statesmen of yesteryear, we could describe them as.
See, I just think like when you say statesman, I think like Walker, Texas Ranger, like that's a statesman. So that's what you see Walker, Texas Ranger, and like CD, the guy who owns the bar, was the old retired Ranger. That's a statesman. Like CD and Walker, Texas Ranger, that is a statesman. Where I just didn't see Mark Stoops as being a statesman, but I did enjoy that.
Oh. What was the other line he had? Where it was something like, "When I'm playing football, I don't even know if I'm playing football," or something. Like like I said, I need 30 minutes with Shiaz Pete, just picking his brain apart. And I gotta admit, Luckett, he might be the first Native American I've ever spoken with. That's a very underrepresented population here in Kentucky. He's a member of Navajo Nation. I don't know if the sports information department has done their research to see if there's been another Native American on the Kentucky football team, but it's got to be one of very few, if any. But I'm fascinated by Pete and his honesty too.
The Geronimo line was good too.
What was the Geronimo line?
He was like, "Who's your favorite athlete that's a Native American?" He said Geronimo.
Yeah. I mean, as an athlete, I wouldn't put it against him. But even just like talking about his recruitment, where he was pretty candid. You know?
Yeah, he was very open about how that kind of shook out.
Yeah, like, hey, some of these schools, they just
came down to Kentucky and Michigan.
Yeah.
Michigan had their starters set. Kentucky had to come in and play.
Pretty honest about it. So we've only learned the beginning of the onion. We've only peeled back one layer of this Shiaz Pete onion. Oh, I do have some breaking news though. Look it. You ready for this? Breaking news?
Yeah.
On Monday at roback.com, ROHOBACK.com, the Kentucky line is dropping. You've seen the activewear elsewhere, those world-class polos. They've got logos. It's coming just in time for March Madness. Gear up for the best time of the year and get your new Cats gear, your new swag for the Cats run through the NCAA tournament at Roback. They've got the great polos, the Q-zips, sweatshirts, shorts, everything you want to look stylish and profiling at roback.com. And when you make your first purchase at RHOBACK.com and use promo code KSR, you're going to get 20% off that purchase. So Monday, set your clocks to it. Go to roback.com and gear up for March with their Kentucky collection. Hitting the online store this Monday. It's going to look great. You're going to chef's kiss. And honestly, it's overdue. Like I see some of the other gear, and I'm like, that looks awesome. When can I get the Kentucky version of it? Wait, no more. It's happening Monday at Roback. Get to that online store, and you'll have it in your wardrobe in time to watch Kentucky. Where are we saying, Luckett? Sweet 16?
Sounds about right.
About Sweet 16? How are we feeling about the Auburn game tomorrow?
Again, this is a game Kentucky has won all year, so they're giving you plus odds. That would be the bet. Not even to bet on. I would just play them to win. Just take the
money line. It
How are
wasn't.
you gonna get plus 180 or something?
I saw it at 168, and I was like, that seems. I feel like you got more value there. I really want. Chad Baker Mazzara is like a 30-year-old man, like flexing on a bunch of JV kids. Like, dude, get a
Auburn
job.
does feel like they have a Kentucky's got an old team too. So but Auburn feels like they have like 5 guys 25 years old.
I mean, their starting lineup's older than OKC's, right? Wasn't that the graphic?
It's that. Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, when you were sick, there was a graphic going around. Now, it might be OKC's starting lineup is 24 and a half, and they're 23.8 for their average age. But yeah, their starting lineups are basically the same age, and the Thunder have the best record in the NBA.
Yeah, that's college sports. Just like we're talking with Kentucky getting old in football, same in basketball too. I think same. It plays just as well. Speaking of old, speaking to Joshua Braun, Nick.
Yeah, he's
Fortner. He made me feel young.
he's like Fortner with hair, you know. I mean, he's because I asked him too. I was like, so you getting tired of college yet? He said, actually, no. Whenever I'm done, I'm going to go back to seminary school for 3 years. And I'm like, what, dude? What? Stop! You're making me look bad, man. Like this is, but when his season ends, he will have played in every SEC stadium except Texas and Oklahoma. Texas was at Arkansas last year, and they're coming to Kroger Field this year. Only 2 stadiums he hasn't played in. That's nuts. Absolutely nuts.
I think that it's evidence of the new world. Play at 3 SEC schools is crazy.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy, just in a nutshell. But yeah, and he also mentioned he had a good relationship with Coach Wolford, Eric Wolford.
Mm-hmm.
Recruited him to play at South Carolina. That's how long ago.
Oh man.
And I also think it was interesting when he was kind of talking to us, and trying to explain how they're building a team, but how it can be difficult sometimes because you don't necessarily he's 6 years older than some guys on the team. So maybe you don't have a lot in common with them. So trying to find ways to just get to know each other and all of that stuff.
Well, in 6 years too, for you and I, once you hit 25, you're basically the same age until age is just a number then. But the difference between an 18-year-old and a 24-year-old it's a lot. It's kind of like 16 and 18 is a big difference. So
yeah,
I'm sure there's challenges to that, but he was very well spoken, very thoughtful, in all of his responses. And it's almost the antithesis of Stoops when you're asking him about the guys, and he's like, "We got married guys and guys with 2 and 3 degrees." Like it's just, it's a different world. They're older, and I don't. And that feels in stark contrast to the last few years when you were just relying on that 22 class, or the 20, was it 21 or 22 class?
Yeah, and mentioned on that 22 class, Stoops talked about how lack of depth hurt them. Specifically, they were relying on some guys to perform, and then when they didn't perform, they really didn't have any contingency plans.
Yeah.
And so making sure that doesn't happen again. That was a notable, and there was also kind of some buzz, or scuttle, or whatever you want to call it, that some guys were taking spring practice off.
Mm-hmm.
Some guys were maybe taking a couple fall camp practices off.
Don't think you're getting that with this crew. I don't think that's
I don't.
the words he uses. They need to understand our expectations. That was his kind
Yeah,
of.
I've got a hunch that it's they're just gonna try to employ a different strategy
Yeah.
there. And also, if you're gonna try to do that, it's gonna be harder probably to do that with guys who have been here 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. Kind of know what they can get away with.
But that's why it was like everyone freaked out, when the purge started and all these players were leaving. Well, that's why you needed that purge, because they really were going to have to change some stuff. And if they didn't do a big kind of overhaul, it was going to make it harder to change. Now, that's not to say it's going to work or anything, but that's just what they're trying to do here right now, which is, he's called it to reboot the roster. Stoops did, and reset the culture. And so we'll have to see how that all plays out. But there was definitely, and then how he answered that practice question, I think it definitely kind of goes to that they're just changing things. They're doing some stuff different, and we'll see if it plays out. But they had to have that purge to really, I think, complete this kind of reset that they're trying to get done.
Apologize, like it, because I got distracted. Max broke 4.3 and ran a 4.29.
Yeah, I saw that.
Oh man, imagine being that fast, like it. I can't. Oh, that nutty. Speaking of the sort of purge, I'm getting thrown off whenever I see articles of other guys before spring practices or whatever, and they're just wearing their Kentucky uniform. It's Huskers Online writing about Dane, or it's the Bengal Tiger writing about Berrien. It throws me off a little bit. One person who I was a little surprised just to do the look test is Dante Dowdell, is this big short yardage back. I just expected him to be a just Josh Clemens, right? Like just got the muscles everywhere. Like he doesn't have that just like brick what house look to him. He looks like a kind of a normal sized back, but he's just really good at getting those hard yards.
Yeah, I think like when you watch Dowdell, like he did, or even like when you kind of look in the data, the broken tackle numbers weren't great, but he got, I would say, with the yards that were blocked on plays. And then like I mentioned this, but the leap, like he did the leap like stuff a lot more than I'd see any back doing. And I asked him, like, was that Nebraska that wanted you to do that, or did you just kind of ad lib and do it yourself? He was like, that was pretty much me. Like I like jumping and scoring. I was like, all right, cool. But yeah, I think like he's put together. But I wouldn't say he's huge, but he's 5'10", 215, 220 pounds.
Right,
It's not like
right.
he's a small tailback.
Yeah.
But that's what you want to see from him, I think, moving forward. And he talked to us about this, about how, he wants to like dispel the narrative that he's just like a short yardage specialist.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to prove that he is kind of the full package. And he mentioned Kentucky having 1,000-yard rushers. He wants to be that type of player, that 1,000-yard rusher who goes and gets drafted. That's what he's trying to do here at Kentucky. So for him to do that, like he's going to have to, definitely that short yardage stuff, that is very, very valuable. But you also got to break off some runs too and break some tackles. And that's something he's going to have to prove here at Kentucky. But I'm really interested to see like how that snap count volume kind of.
Well, there's an opportunity because I think it's whoever proves himself is going to get the rock. I don't, as Stoops said, we're not worried about stepping on anybody's toes. You either get with it or you get lost. Which I think the one other thing that was newsworthy that I maybe should have mentioned off the top is that there's no update on True Edwards. Between you and I, I think I saw him running at Nutter when we got there. It looked, big tall guy running really fast. I assume that was
Mm-hmm.
him. But he essentially said that it's out of our hands. They're making the decisions. I don't understand some of them. You would think some of these guys are pretty no-brainers, and they're not right away. So I think that he could either be wide receiver 1 or not on the team, and that's a big deal. So judges, NCAA, whatever they got to do to make it happen, they need to make it clear. And I think a lot of the cases too, like it, is this injunction with Pavia was just enough to open the door, and they don't want to make a complete blanket waiver. So they're trying to work their way through it before it does come to not cutting time, for the lack of a better term, before like push comes to shove, and they actually have to make decisions. I think they're just kind of piddle farting around right now with them all.
The understanding I have with this situation and the expectation is that I think they really want to just get this settlement through. And that's supposed to come in April or May. The final, finally it's
signed. Yeah.
Yes.
And then it will go in effect in July.
So after that is done, I think they then want to come back to this and be and negotiate it where they'll give them a 1-year blanket.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, it's done. So these JUCO guys now, like True Edwards, could get a 7th year. But a guy who's a redshirt senior receiver at Utah State that spent a couple years in JUCO, he won't get. Does that make sense? He won't get that extra year in 26.
Correct. It would just be like a one-off sort of deal.
Yes, it would just be one-off. And the impression is that's gonna pass, but there's some other things they're trying to get through first. Mm-hmm. And so that is, I think, why we're hearing from Kentucky that there's no official word yet. But the expectation is that that's going to happen. Vanderbilt doesn't have another quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they would put themselves in that position if there was any chance Pavia wouldn't get this waiver.
Right.
So there are smart schools, but they are still a smart school. So I think that they know what they're doing. It's the same with Kentucky True Edwards. It's just you're playing that little waiting game. But I expect him to be on the team. Him and Kendrick Law would be kind of my 2 favorites to be, and maybe Macklin in there. Those 3 would be kind of Kentucky's top 3 receivers to me. And then from there down, we'll figure out where everything else settles.
I want to ask you about Kendrick Law, but just quickly, while you mentioned Vanderbilt, went to the coffee shop the other day, and the dude behind the counter was pouring my coffee.
Did you go to Starbucks? Did you get confronted?
I did not get in a fight with Howard Schultz's kid. Had no idea that Jordan Schultz was Howard Schultz's son. And
that's news to me.
Also, Jordan Schultz has big Fox energy, right? He is just the most, of course he works for Fox. Really upset we missed the confrontation at the Starbucks JW Marriott. But this was a different one where there weren't NFL insiders accosting one another. This guy was wearing a Vanderbilt shirt, and I was like, Vandy, huh? He's like, yeah, didn't go there or anything, but it's a great, people ask me about it all the time. They're like, go comment, go Doors. And I think my new move, I think I need to get a Ivy League sweatshirt just so people think I'm smart. Because you know what? I thought it made me wonder, why is the guy who went to Vanderbilt working at the coffee shop? Shouldn't you be somebody's boss somewhere like that? So I think that's going to be I'm going to have to add that to the arsenal just to, because you really got to church this up to make it look smarter than what he is. Let's be real. Let's call a spade a spade.
Yeah. 100%.
If you are looking for a new job, though, getting tired and stuck in a rut in your career, Andy Ludicky is the kind of guy that you need to call. And you can give him a call at 404-973-9901. Andy is an expert in the franchising industry where he can help find the right fit for you to help fulfill your dreams of business ownership. There's a wide variety of franchising opportunities out there. You don't just have to run a McDonald's. There's a lot that you probably don't know about, and Andy can consult with you to make sure that you're on the right path to small business ownership. Just going over to myperfectfranchise.net, take a look at the services he offers, and there's not a charge, right? Like the services are 100% free. He's here to answer any of your questions you may have. So go on and visit him at myperfectfranchise.net. You can also email him, Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. Andy Ludicky is the expert in all things franchising. So go check him out today. Look at Kendrick Wall. I didn't get the chance to talk to him. I was busy talking with David Gusta, who I quickly didn't realize, but he basically told everybody when he's in the portal, like, my brother's going wherever I'm going. So package deal, the UC Davis transfer, defensive back. I'm assuming he's a walk-on. But they were a package deal. Gusta was pretty, like, I appreciated his, like, DGAF kind of feel about him. It was asked him about Pac-12 realignment, and he said, pardon my French, but pardon my language, but that was bullshit. And so, it kind of took the gloves off. Being in the Asian culture, like, has visited 6 different countries in the Eastern Hemisphere. Went to Japan and spent a bunch on anime, which I'd totally anime. Very popular with the kids. We totally missed that wave at the Roush house. But I was busy talking to Gusta when you were talking to Kendrick Wall. So tell me what you heard from Mr. Wall.
Yeah, basically they showed him how they used Barry and Brown last year, both as a kick returner, in the slot, jet motion guy, jet sweeps, outside, inside. That is the plan for Kendrick Law. That is how they want to utilize him. Mm-hmm. And Barry and Brown, there was like a gadget type receiver role that Kentucky was trying to play him with. It didn't work necessarily all the time. Where I think Law is maybe a little bit more better suited for that. Like, I think he's better probably as just a natural ball carrier. His hands, good blocker. Maybe not the best route runner, but short and can create after the catch. Where Berrien was more straight line speed. If he got to go run straight, he was dangerous. Mm-hmm. Where Law's a little bit different, a little bigger. But definitely he's gonna, like he said, he's gonna come in and try to be a leader for the room. That came up in our conversation, and is again someone I think that they're gonna look to. That's gonna be a really big part of their game plans when the season starts. I just want people to remember, like, when the season first started, like, that jet sweep series was a big part of that offense.
Yeah, and it kind of went away.
I think that's coming back. It's just Kendrick Law is just going to be used on that, and we'll see how it plays out. But again, I'm not saying he's as explosive as Berrien Brown, but I think he's just on some of those runs that Berrien lost 4 yards. I think Kendrick Law probably gets 7 yards, where Berrien can maybe bust one randomly for 50. That one maybe Law only gets for 20. But like, but there's definitely I think he's a better fit for that kind of like gadget type role.
Inspector Gadget?
What was Inspector Gadget's name?
His real name?
Yeah.
Man, great question. Matthew Broderick. Which RIP Michelle Trachtenberg. Definitely had a crush on her when I was a kid. Euro trip? She passed away recently.
Yeah, she was in, you said Euro trip?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
remember that.
Remember her most for. She made out with her brother when they did the absinthe. That was great.
Was that the Scotty Doesn't Know movie?
Oh, just a banger. You can play Scotty Doesn't Know, and that gets your Friday going the right direction. Great movie. And
Did it say how she died yet?
No. Apparently she had some health issues. Like, she had a liver transplant or something recently. So, I don't know. She might have been dealing with stuff. The Gene Hackman thing was weird. His dog
I did see that.
And his wife all passed away. Are you a fan of Hoosiers?
Yeah, Hoosiers is a good movie. I think it's kind of weird because it gets. I think the people that really like it kind of over exaggerate it, and I think the people that
See,
act like they don't like it are like you really like
well,
that movie.
see, that's my thing is I just hate how much it emboldened all those idiots who were already so entitled. Bob Knight made them feel like they're a superior class of individuals, and they're not. And that just Gene Hackman just emboldened them even further. So that's why I'm anti Hoosiers. I have never even seen the movie start to finish, and I refuse to for that
You just
fact.
need to watch. You need to watch. You haven't seen what this in the Rockies. What other movies haven't you
Well,
seen?
but I mean, I've seen some of Hoosiers, but I never just sat down and watched it start to
Yeah,
finish.
but you got to sit down and watch the whole movie. It's
The
not watching the movie.
Replacements is a better sports Gene Hackman sports movie than Hoosiers.
Replacements is great. I don't know if I was willing to go that far.
The Replacements gets kind of crapped on because it was in that era of 2000s comedies, which are all awesome. And I'm telling you about Euro Trip, not for everybody, but awesome. But
Replacements is great. It's a great. It's a great football movie.
did I also really liked Enemy of the State too. But his
Enemy
best.
State's good.
Have you seen Birdcage?
Yes, it's been a long time, but yes, I have.
Birdcage is like, I, who doesn't laugh at that movie? Like,
Yeah,
how can you sit down and watch that movie and not die laughing? And I was just talking about that movie the other day, and I forgot about Hank Azaria trying to be the like macho butler, and he can't wear shoes, and he just keeps falling down. And, man, movie
yeah.
just
I need to go
rough.
back and watch it because it's been a long time. But yeah, I have seen that.
And that's one of those two. If you haven't seen in a long time, like it's perfect. You're just gonna die laughing throughout. So R.I.P. to Michelle Trachtenberg and Gene Hackman. Do you have? I felt like we touched a lot. Um, oh, here's another fun fact I learned the other day. Zach Calzada's sister is an All-American soccer player
Yeah,
who transferred from A&M to Notre Dame. They're gonna wear the same number this year. Never done that before. But they're both wearing number 5. Well, that's pretty cool.
yeah. I did not know that. That she was or that he had a sister that played that. So that was nice. That was nice to know. We could maybe do a talk about siblings, like Grant Godfrey's brother, is a starting forward at Georgia.
He plays football. No, well, he plays football for Mike White on the basketball court.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Cutter
they just push him
Cutter
around.
Bowley's sister obviously was
Yeah, she was badass.
Oregon and Notre Dame, I think, basketball.
Yeah, and she was the national player of the year in high school. Was
Yeah,
outstanding at E-Town.
Drew Edwards' dad was David Edwards, maybe. It was a guy who played in the NFL. Hold on, it was like an All-American at Louisiana Tech. Troy Edwards won the Bolitnikoff in 1998 at Louisiana Tech.
won the Bolitnikoff at Louisiana Tech. That's
Mm-hmm.
that takes some skill. That takes some skill. Here was one that I did need to mention. McKeese Grace. He said he was 5'9", a 5'9" safety as a sophomore in high school.
Yeah,
And he grew to 6'4" and played defensive end his senior year. And that's because I was like, was it a size thing for you? And he's like, I didn't play defensive line until I was a senior. I'm like, oh, well, that might explain it. Some people
adds
take a
up.
little bit
Yeah,
longer. And he grew, I mean, I'm a tall guy. I grew 5 inches. I would tell people 6. I always said I was 6'6", but I'm 6'5.5". I was 6 foot even in 8th grade, and I was 6'5.5" in high school. The next year, Uh, you eat a lot, you sleep a lot, and your knees hurt a lot. I can't imagine growing 7 inches in 2 years. Like that's pretty nuts. It's pretty nuts. He looks a little bit bigger with shoulder pads on. You know who looked huge was the USC transfer, Sam Green. I thought
hmm
he was ripping the elastic out of his jersey. That dude
he's sturdy. Yeah,
he's yoked up. So
yeah,
I'm excited just to see the guys. I'm excited that Stoops is going to have some sort of spring game. You know what exactly that is, how they phrase it, but we're going to get to go to Kroger Field and watch these guys play a little football. So I'm glad he confirmed they are going to do something for the fans this spring to get out there and see him because I was just fired up to be able to meet and talk with those guys. Like this is why we do the job, Luckett, and I had a great time on Tuesday.
Yeah, we'll be back over there here shortly for pro day. So the off season is off and running right now, and before you know it, another portal window will be here.
God, that's a 4-letter word right now. I don't even want to think about it. Did you see this happened? I don't even know if we wrote about it, but Jed Fish was just like, why don't we just do the NFL calendar? Like,
he made good points.
Yeah, it's like why can't we just make people stay for the spring semester and then you do the portal after that, just when they do the NFL draft? Makes sense.
This is something we didn't get to, but like this playoff expansion, like this was always kind of the plan. Like when you go back to when it was first reported, like ESPN's $1 billion deal doesn't start till 26. It was always assumed that it would be bigger than 12 when they got it.
Yeah.
So that's part of the, everyone's freaking out, but that was always, I think, part of the deal.
Yeah.
And they were always going to use this 2-year term to figure out, like, the
issues with it.
Well, the key buzzwords are access. Make sure the SEC and Big Ten have their access and whatnot. But it's going to 14. Guess how many teams are in the NFL playoffs? 14. And then, like, I'm reading all this championship game stuff, and I'm like, they're just trying to recapture, like, their own version of NFL last week of the year.
Yeah.
Where you have some of these playing games to get in the playoffs.
You have the divisional games in the last week to get the playoff berth. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I'm like. When I'm going, I'm like, this is just like, they're just trying to recreate that. That's exactly what they're trying to do.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm for that. Because it would make sense to just tell everybody to hold on tight, because they're also going to be playing some teams are playing football until February. So you can focus on the high school early on, and you don't have to rush to get through free agency. So.
Yeah, another thing I'll say, some of these coaches are starting to throw their weight around with the spring game and the portal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're going to make a big push to get this portal moved to spring only.
And here's another part too, Luckett. Think about from just not just our perspective and the content perspective, but like what's going on in April in the sports calendar. March Madness ends. In the Final
Masters
Four,
in the draft,
and then the Masters, and then you've got this dead time to the NFL draft. You have the Derby, and then maybe there's a big fight. And then it's like, well, the NBA playoffs are here. Maybe they're good. Maybe I'll turn that on. But overall, there's nothing happening in college football. It's just spring game. Like that's a good, I think, opportunity for the sport to have a big offseason moment and really capture a sports fan's attention. It would also make things a lot easier on us. I would like it a lot. I would like it a lot more. I would enjoy the holiday season a little bit more.
Yeah, that seems like they're making a push. Whether that'll turn into anything, but it definitely I think they definitely want change, and like you're seeing a lot of them start to speak out and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're running out of gas here. It's about beer 30 over at the Roush House. Big weekend. We got a little baptism action going on in conjunction with the Cats hosting the number 1 team in the country tomorrow. So we'd love to send Bruce Pearl packing with an L from Rupp Arena, where according to him, Kentucky always gets a home whistle. According to Bruce. That guy.
He would know. He would know.
I was at the barbecue game. That was great. Kicking Tennessee's ass that night. Would love to see him screaming and sweating and just Hopefully the Cats can get it done. We'll be back with some more football talk next week, I'm sure. We'll find a way. But it's been a pleasure chatting ball with y'all today. Enjoy your weekend. For Adam Luckett, I'm Nick Roush. Go Cats and go Kroger.